The film department is supported by UNLV Film. At the film department of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, every story has a beginning. With degree programs for undergraduates and graduates, state-of-the-art equipment and facilities, incredible professional internships around the world, and expert guest speakers, students discover the power and potential of cinema as they prepare for the film and television industry and beyond. Learn more at unlv.edu/film. UNLV Film. Find your voice, tell your story.
Hello, welcome to the Film Department, the movie review and more podcast of UNLV Film. I'm Marie Palmieri, a first-year film major here at UNLV, and I am joined by
Thalia Sanders, and tonight we have a special guest with us tonight, Professor David Mackenzie.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
So tonight we watched Fuse, which was such an amazing film.
Amazing.
What did everybody think? Did we like it?
Yeah.
A great response. I love to hear it. So we just have a couple questions for you tonight, and then we're going to open it up to the audience to ask some questions. So did you want to start us out?
Sure. So as you said before the screening began, London, this kind of happens a lot where bombs get rediscovered and such. So London is so crucial to the story, but do you think it could take place anywhere else, and where?
Yeah, well, I mean, it could take place in places that had bombs. I mean, in the Second World War, one is obviously sort of sort of the European one is more obvious, but I guess it could take place in places later in history. But something about the discovery of these bombs over the years on the site just felt like it was interesting to me. In fact, Ben, who wrote it, he lives in Berlin and thought about doing it in Berlin, but I just kind of wanted to have that London flavour. And I felt kind of it was a chance to do a British film, and it's the first time I've ever done in London, even though I went to college there and all that. But I made little tiny shorts, but the first sort of feature film I've done there. Just for me it felt right to do it there.
Was it difficult filming in London?
Is it? I mean, London's not easy to film in. I did, my previous film was in New York, and they're both similar in that the traffic's bad. You have to it's sometimes hard to get permitting for things. London is a bit harder, I think, than New York because that part where we filmed in was Westminster, and you have to have 3 months warning for the permitting. So closing the roads off for the evacuation was quite a challenge, and we had the police allowed us to have 3 minutes of road closure every 15 minutes on a Sunday morning. And so we had this sort of really detailed plan, a huge big kind of conference table map with toy cars and toy cameras and all that. And we planned out what each 3 minutes what we would do. In the 15 minutes that we had to stand down to let the traffic flow, we moved cameras. And if you wanted a second take, you kept them where they were. But the 3 minutes started, and then we had to put our fake roadblock in there. And then get the cars going. So it was really tightly coordinated. But for a director, when it's happening like that, you kind of have to sit back and let it happen because it's sort of out of your hands.
What did you feel like was the most difficult scene to film?
I don't really know. I mean, they were all kind of challenging, but they were all good. It was quite a fun shoot. I think some of the stuff on that construction site was hard because it was, so that was a big set basically, and lots of sharp objects in there, and although it felt like a great kind of 360-degree area that we had control of, there were just a lot of moving parts there. So that was a challenge. It was very noisy, but the guys sort of became almost like they were actually in the army, and we had some people who, the engineers were all ex-army. So when Aaron sort of barked out orders, they just naturally sort of did what they were told, and so it kind of almost sort of started to run itself after a while.
Wow. Going off of that, you said you went to film school in London. What advice would you give yourself as a young, if you could talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself as a young filmmaker, or just any young filmmakers out there?
Well, for any young filmmaker, I always say the same thing, which is, and I've said it before here, but which is a keep on going, and because it's a struggle, and b form gangs of friends, and it's one thing that I've really kind of caught while I've been at UNLV is that you guys seem to be have found that in your own form, and you all seem to be working on each other's films and really kind of engage with each other. I met some graduates in Sundance who've done the same thing, still working on each other's films. And I think it's the most important thing because you grow up together, and so everyone's getting the same thing out of it. And I think that's a really important thing for film students and people graduating into and getting into the real world to keep doing that. Of course, you've got to take on jobs, you've got to do things to pay the rent, but carrying on making your own films with your friend and peer group is such a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you had this idea 15 years ago and you had brought it to Ben Hopkins to actually write it. How did you find yourself becoming the director of this film?
Well, I was always going to be the director. It was my idea, and it was my idea, and I produced it, and that was it. Although that's not entirely true because there was a point where I thought I'm too busy. This is a it may or may not be for me, and so I thought I might hand it over to someone else, but still produce it. But then a gap in the schedule appeared, and I just thought, okay, now's the time. So we did it. Yeah.
Well, the tension in this film was really, really high and it was extremely well done. I was curious to know, how did you go about directing a lot of those scenes that were quieter and kind of relied more on actor performances?
I'm always trying to. Each scene is always a different game, and so you're trying to find what's in the heart of the scene. You've obviously got ideas and preconceptions, but once it starts coming alive as a scene in its own right, I'm trying to kind of be tune into what those things are and try and bring them out and try and help the actors kind of bring those things out. So when you got a scene with Aaron like kind of dusting off the fuse on an unexploded bomb, it's a man and a piece piece of plastic basically, and sort of faking, but the Earth's there. But I let him run some of those shots ran on for 10 minutes, so he went through the whole thing. So he was kind of getting into the whole world of it, and just kind of not cutting and just letting it run and letting him find it. You kind of create some kind of sense of authenticity, but also it really helps attention. So that's that, and then the few scenes which are actually kind of relatively straight dialogue scenes, which you can't. There aren't that many in the film, But for example, when all the guys sit around the table in the farmhouse when they're dividing up the loot, that it was like, ooh, everything stops there. I sort of enjoyed the fact that it was quite still and letting the space go, and again trying to create tension with the suspicion between the characters. So you're kind of you're trying to find the mood of each scene and try and bring that out as much as possible when you're in the middle of that, and try and get as much juice out of the scene as you can until you have to move on.
Yeah, the pacing in this movie was absolutely beautiful. I mean, there were moments where it was like dead silent and I was so on edge. I felt like I was there as well.
Yeah, I'm also curious to know, like, how sparse is this script as far as like, did you have a lot of creative control when it came to directing, or was it like on the page? Like,
well, I mean, the script went through many phases, and the last few phases, Ben wasn't really involved because it was all in relation to the advice we were getting from the military and the police and actually the former bank robber who we spoke to, and so we were evolving that a little bit. But I have an attitude to scripts which it wasn't necessarily the same as everyone's. That we start with a script and we shoot a couple of versions of that, and then we start messing with the script. And editorially, I tend to cut quite a lot of it down. And it's interesting because you'd think, okay, well, you cut that down on the page, that you're saving time, but actually, if you're cutting 20-30% of the dialogue out of stuff that you've shot where the dialogue's there, the kind of the ghost of the dialogue is still there. So you have the looks, you have the exchange, you have the atmospheres of that dialogue, but you don't actually need it to be stated. So that tends to be the way I edit films, is to make them more sparse than they are on the page. I think if it was as sparse as it ends up being, it probably would be too sparse on the page, and people wouldn't fully understand it when they're reading it. But that's a game you play.
You mentioned an ex-bank robber consulting on the script and ex-military. Can you dive into who was consulted on this movie in general?
The consultant, yeah. Well, we had a chap called Nick Orr who is a ex-regimental sergeant major in the Royal Logistics Corps and bomb disposal expert, and now is a civilian going to war zones and former war zones, defusing bombs. There's something sort of slightly the end card of the thing where you talk about the anonymous donation to this organization. That's sort of the kind of thing that Nick does. But he's a complete expert on the field, an amazing man, extremely courageous and interesting. And I showed the script to him like probably 8 months before we started shooting, and we started evolving the script because he's going, well, it's great, I love the idea, but this isn't accurate. This isn't accurate. That wouldn't happen there. The whole of that final scene in Afghanistan was completely rewritten to make it more plausible as far as he was concerned. So we really lent on him, but also we then had a kind of bomb boot camp kind of thing where we went with them to put some things off and actually kind of make sort of extraordinary shape charges and all those kind of things. And Aaron kind of was there, and he really lent into Nick as a personality, and I think he kind of channeled Nick as it's closer to Nick's accent he used, and the way his body language was, and the way he dealt with other people. So he really lent into it, not just the kind of the advice he was being given, but the sort of personality of it as well. And then we had another Nick. We had Bomb Nick and we had Cop Nick. And Cop Nick was an ex-cop who advised Gugu and advised us on the machinations of the police control room, incident room, and based on the real ones. And Gugu went out with him to and us to some of the real ones, and we just tried to lead into it as much as possible. And that was. It's obviously a piece of fiction, but it feels to me. I always think if I don't know the answer to something, as a question an actor's asking about some reality, I need to know someone who I can ask, so that we really feel like what we're representing is reflecting the reality of what that we're trying to put across.
Do we want to open up the room to questions?
You're reading my mind. So, do we have questions? And what I'd like is, after you hear the question, if one of you could repeat the question just so we get it in for the podcast, okay? You're too far away from me, man. Hold on. Honestly, you could probably shout it and they'd be able to hear it. But let's use the microphone, since I'm sure UNLV paid a lot of money for them to begin with. Right? Here we go. Introduce yourself, too.
Hi, my name is Corey. I was just curious if you had multiple ideas for the way that you decided to end it, whether or not each idea had them getting away with it, or if you had some possible options of them getting caught.
So he was curious if there was multiple endings and if they got caught in every one of the endings.
I don't think they ever got caught in any one of the endings, but that's not to say they might not eventually get caught in some sequel or something else. But interestingly, that the sort of the flashback at the end, which was there structurally in the script, and part of the reason I said I asked Ben, I said I really want to end this film on a really high tension moment. And so we came up with it because the way the story unfolds, there's very little room for backstory. You don't get a chance to explain how they could meet each other, because you don't know they're together, and it's moving very fast. So there's no time for sort of pauses for kind of character development. So you have to find ways of getting the character kind of like organically in there with the action and things that are happening. But that sequence in various incarnations of the edit moved at various places. There was a bit of it at the beginning of the film at one point, which some people liked. I didn't. I never did. And then it was before they get away to Istanbul in that sequence. And at one point, she says, "All roads lead to Afghanistan." Hard cut to Afghanistan. It was like, which was an idea, but it never really worked. So we tried it, and then it just ended up just feeling. It was quite late in the edit when we put it back to where it was in the script, and just feeling like this is a a quite cool structure to have a film that plays out almost in real time, and then suddenly you have a sort of interesting action-based sort of explanatory flashback.
Hi, I'm Roman. This might be a dumb question, but I used to live in the UK, and those were the clearest, brightest, bluest days I've ever seen in London. So I wanted to ask if you had issues with the weather. Is that like a common issue when you're filming in places like that?
So Roman was wanting to know about weather in the UK during filming.
We got very, very lucky. Honestly, because it all takes place in 6 hours. If we'd had a real washout day, it would have really, we'd had to kind of like cut to thunder and lightning and rain on the puddles. I was prepared that might happen at one point, but we had a sort of strangely nice summer. Sometimes there was a little bit of rain in some places, but nothing to wash us out. When we were shooting the Afghanistan sequence, we did have one day that completely washed us out. We just had to literally just down tools. It could have been it could have got much more messy than it was. So the fortune was shining on us in that particular element.
Hi, I'm Andy. I'm a producing teacher. Do you mind if I ask you just a bunch of real quick logistical questions? It's me. It's innate. I can't help it. How many days did you shoot?
And Marie
How many days did you shoot?
I think it was 37 days.
How many were in Istanbul?
How many were in
One.
Where did you do the Afghanistan work?
Where did you do the
In a quarry an hour outside London.
There's so much like choreography and stunt work and all of the video feeds and everything like that. Did you do storyboards? Did you do previs?
Did you do storyboards?
Well, the video feeds are kind of interesting because we shot all the police stuff first. So we had generic shots on there, and some of which worked fine, most of which were, but some of them which we had to augment with visual effects, putting them in there. I don't tend to do storyboards anymore. I did a short film, my last short film, and I storyboarded every frame of it just about, and shot every one of the storyboards. The film did quite well. I got awards and all that kind of stuff. But I found the process to be kind of slightly soul destroying. I found out I just thought, all I'm doing is just repeating myself from what so I now just tend to only do storyboards for stunt based work and things like that. So there's storyboards for a few of the scenes. I'm happy to show them to you guys at some point, to see which ones I did. I use those as a kind of visual tool when you need to get everyone else on side so that everyone knows what they're doing.
Last question, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. What was the budget?
The budget was about $28 million.
Good for you. That's awesome. If you feel like it, but maybe not now, but I'd love to know how you, and I think a lot of people in the room, how did you finance it? How did you work with that?
How did you finance it? How did you work with it? Sorry.
Well, financing it, there's this company Anton effectively financed it, but they financed it on the back of foreign sales. So they really were sort of a combination of a sales agency and a financier. So they probably raised 80% of the budget on foreign sales before we went ahead, and then the rest of it they financed, and I know that they were paying big chunks of interest every week. You know, they were getting very anxious towards the end of the schedule about finishing the film, and to a point where we're going like, this isn't actually ready yet, and there was a nasty logjam with VFX and everything, and this enormous pressure to deliver. I understand they had to pay, you know, they were just hemorrhaging money in interest, but it's interesting. What's that? Well, hopefully they will. And yeah, you know, it's this and the last one, the first time I've ever had one-stop shops in terms of finance. And normally you're putting a patchwork of finance, you're getting, you know, a little bit of money from, you know, European countries, Australia, other territories, and you're trying to build it bit by bit. It makes it legally complicated and a bit of a pain for the producers. In this case, the pain from the producers, you know, were in other areas, and I think Gillian, my producing partner, is still owed money by them and all that, you know. So it's not wholly comfortable.
We got another from Gigi right here. Go ahead, Gigi.
Hi, I'm Gigi, but you can call me Gianna. My question is, what was it like working with such an amazing cast? I mean, you have Theo James, he's one of my favorites, and also Aaron Taylor Johnson. So what was it like working with such an amazing cast, and kind of what was your experience working with them?
What was it like working with such an amazing cast?
Well, I mean, I've worked with Aaron before. Aaron worked on my film Outlaw King, and I really liked working with him. And I think, you know, I think he is a leading man, and so it was, you know, he was the first person I asked. And then I followed it up with Gugu and Theo, and Sam Worthington is someone who I've worked with on 3 films. And so two out of the 4 of that kind of bunch are already people who kind of know the way I work and all that, and are into it. And Theo quickly caught on and got into the vibe too. We had it was a pretty pleasant experience, and they enjoyed the way that I do it, which is I sort of let them be. I give them quite a lot of freedom, and they build up to it. Theo was extremely, you know, Theo's also a bit of a producer as well, so he was always asking me kind of questions, and you know, I think he's probably one. I suspect you'll see a directing credit from him fairly soon. So he was just like, you know, asking, you know, I really enjoyed working with him. And Gugu as well was great. Although, as I said just now, you know, we shot all that police stuff first, so it was weird doing, you know, like having all this drama going on, but for stuff that they're looking on the screen which isn't there. You know, that was kind of the most fake in a way of some of what we were doing. You know.
Camera.
Hi, is this on? Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Hi, Cameron, but everyone calls me Cam. I'm a UNLV alumni. I graduated last year. I was actually here when you guested on the class and you showed the preview a year ago. So I wanted to come back to see the finished product, and I'm very happy you got the job. I actually thought you were the best candidate as well. I want to ask you about, I know this started as an idea about bomb disposal in the UK because of how common it is. When did the idea for the bank heist come in, and when did the idea then come in to tie in the Great Britain's involvement in the Afghanistan war? At what point during development?
When did the idea for the bank heist tie-in and the Afghanistan war tie-in come in?
Well, the bank robbery side of it came in immediately, because that was for me. That was the idea of doing this mashup between the 2 genres, and sort of trying to kind of double the tension in a way. The connection with the Afghanistan thing, I think, really comes from Ben's imagination. He'd actually made a documentary about IEDs in Afghanistan, and so he, you know, I think he thought there was something kind of really interesting about having that character who's essentially putting the front on of being a kind of, you know, slightly harassed son who's, you know, looking after his parents who keep nagging at him. And then revealing that he's in on it, you know, all the way through. And there was something kind of, you know, and also the expectations of, you know, seeing those boys there and going like, are they in on the other side or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think there was subversion going on in there that was kind of interesting.
Sean.
Hello, Professor Mackenzie. Good to see you again. Great film, by the way. My question is, so Aaron Taylor Johnson is so excited about taking these shots, right? Like after a job well done, why does he get everyone together just to pour it out?
I didn't hear the second half
It's
of
a
that.
tradition.
Why does Aaron Taylor Johnson, when they're drinking the alcohol, why does he pour it out and not take a drink?
It was left as something kind of vague. It was left as that either he's doing it in honor of his friends, or maybe he's not drinking. So it's sort of one or the other, and he may be not drinking because of possible religious reasons. He may not be drinking because he's an ex-alcoholic. It was just left as a kind of as a weird sort of something that made him different to the others.
And that's it for this week's Film Department. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and let's give a big thank you to David Mackenzie for joining us for today's episode.
Thank you guys, really appreciate it. Lots of good questions and great to be doing this with this audience. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Imagined by the Rogers Foundation, the Beverly Theater brings cinematic connectivity, novel collaborations, live happenings, cultural portals, and a zest for independent spirits to downtown Las Vegas. With a mission to stage uncommon cinematic, literary, and live experiences, the Beverly Theater is Las Vegas's first and only independent film house, storytelling arena, and live music venue. Check out our event calendar at thebeverlytheater.com.